righty. Let's see. I guess I'll take the lead here. Welcome everybody. Happy Tuesday. Debate Tuesday for those of you that aren't watching the debate. Welcome to Talk About Whiskey. We are joined tonight with Gregg Snyder of Chicken Cock Whiskey, long-standing veteran of the industry. So super cool to have him on with us tonight. And yeah, I think how you been doing, John? How you been doing, Greg?
I'm doing great, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you tonight and talk my favorite subject, and that's whiskey.
I like it.
I think we'll be in good shape then.
Yeah, man, it's been a long day for me here too, so it's nice to finally be sitting down with a glass of something.
Excellent.
Let's see. I think usually we lead with our bourbon news. I don't think we have a ton of news this week. All the barrels are in flux. Greg, for the Our Bourbon subreddit, we're picking like 6 or 7 barrels this fall. And I think this is one of the rare weeks we don't have any news. Russell should hit soon. Smooth Amber will hit in a week or two. New Riff is scheduled for November, and that's about that. So what have you been up to, John?
Well, it's been one of those long weeks, even though we're not very far into the week yet. But I think we're going to make it through. We got some whiskey to sip on tonight, and one hell of a guest to come in here and chat with us about his massive career here in the industry and talk a little bit about this brand that they got going on. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
Let's see who's up in the chat here, what everybody's drinking. Let us know what you guys are sipping on so we can kind of, live vicariously through you, pretend that we're drinking that. Looks like we got a little Wild Turkey Rare Breed going.
Yeah, that's always a hit.
Good way to fire up a Tuesday night.
There we go. You drinking anything, right, Greg, or besides, obviously you're here on behalf of Chicken Cock.
It's funny you saw Wild Turkey. You guys probably had a copy of my bio, but yeah, I was managing director of Wild Turkey for over 10 years, and a lot of people don't realize it, but I actually created the Russell's Reserve brand. So,
oh man,
you've got
we can talk about that later on.
You've got a fan base here then.
The hype train has left the station.
Oh man. Oh, we got a chocolate milk drinker tonight. Okay,
that's a new one for us.
There you go.
And a little Old Forester 1920. Good choice.
It's funny because that's what I was planning to drink like an hour ago before my coffee maker broke, and I had to find a way to fix it.
Oops.
That's a rough
At least
one.
you found out that it broke tonight and not tomorrow morning when you were like really desperately needing it.
Yeah, and it's not even like broke. It'll only make 1/2 of a cup, like a pot of coffee. No matter how much water you put in, it will only make half of it, and I can't figure it out.
Huh. Angel share.
So, but cool. Well, what do you say? Should we dive on in here?
Let's do it. Let's dig in.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us, Greg. I mean, you've been doing this for, honestly, I'll be honest with you, you've been doing this for longer than I've been alive. So that's impressive. First off, that's some perseverance in a very changing industry. So how did you kind of get started? I have your list of things actually goes off my screen. I have to scroll to get to the top and bottom. But what got you into whiskey a million billion years ago?
It was just a stroke of faith, guys. I right out of college, I have a business degree from Indiana University, and your senior year through career placement, they post interviews, companies that want to come interview graduates, and Joseph E. Seagram & Son had a facility over in Louisville, Kentucky, and they were one of the companies that were posted interviews. So I interviewed with them, and was one of the opportunities I got to start my career. And so I said, that's something I think I'd like to try. And so it was a frontline supervisor position, and so I took the interview, was fortunate enough to get the job, and started out as a frontline supervisor in the barrel warehouse department, and was there about 3 weeks, and I was moved to maintenance, but as a maintenance supervisor. But it was a great training ground. That facility no longer exists. In 1983, they actually shut it down. But in 1978, June of 1978 is when I started in this industry, and at Seagram's at that time, if you wanted to learn and were aggressive and pick things up fairly quickly, they gave me the opportunity to move around. And so literally in the 5 years that facility was open, I worked in every plant or every division, every department within that facility, from the distillery and dryer house to the barrel warehouse to filling barrels, putting barrels away, taking barrels out, dumping barrels, filtration, processing, receiving, shipping, bottling, quality, maintenance, you name it. I had an opportunity to work in basically everything. And so it was a great training ground. And you know, as I say, it kind of gets in your blood. And I mean, I loved it from day one. It just, it was very fortunate that I chose the right career right from the start and stuck with it for all these years, over 42 years now. So,
man, yeah, that's wild. Especially to be able to just kind of move around. Like, you know, that's jack of all trades by, you know, early on.
Yeah, sort of like a baptism by fire there. Kind of throw you around into every role, let you see what sticks.
Yeah, well, you know, it was I was very fortunate to be put on that fast track. Not everybody has that opportunity, but to gain that much exposure in that short period of time was something that was fairly unusual. And again, I'm very thankful for it. Appreciate the opportunity, and it kind of paved the way and laid the foundation for my career. So,
wow, that's wild. I think. Yeah, I'm trying to think at least when I was coming out of college, like, so I'm in software, you know, not a lot of the distilleries are looking for software people. I would have, that's an interesting foray into it, which is pretty cool. Like, oh, and John's dead. Wow. That didn't take long at all, but I'm sure he'll come back. Let's see. So, okay. So yeah. So you got to start, was there a particular favorite of those? Like, well, obviously we know where you ended up now, but, you know, of those 5 different departments, you know, which one struck you the most?
No, I guess that, you know, it was great to see how they all interacted, you know, because what you learn in one department really helped you in other departments to better understand what you were doing and what needed to be done into the next step of the process. So, you know, it really, you know, the full integration of it was very beneficial in my mind. I mean, there were a lot of people that, you know, went into that and they just kind of focused and stayed in one department their entire career. And that's okay. But I wanted to learn. I was aggressive, and I just was anxious to get on my career and do the best I could. And again, was very fortunate to have that opportunity. So
that's pretty sweet. How big was the facility at that time? That's
oh, wow. The facility Seagram's it was a huge facility. It was one of their show places, actually. You know, they kind of wine and dine, and people from all over the world for Kentucky Derby, and brought them in there. And it looked like a college campus. I mean, it was really, you know, the hedges were preened very nicely, and all the landscaping was just, it was amazing. The facility itself, you know, it was an older facility and been around. It wasn't the latest technology by any means, but it was very functional, and we made some good whiskey back in those days.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. So from there, where did you move after Seagram's?
So after that, when they shut down, I had an opportunity to relocate with them. I would have wound up in New York City at the corporate offices. And at that time, I really wasn't ready to move. So I accepted the severance package. I got my MBA in 1 year's time and at Bellarmine University in Louisville, and they paid for every penny of it. So that was a great opportunity. But I went to work for Brown-Forman shortly thereafter. And you know, again, Brown-Forman was great. I started out as the bottling manager for their second shift, and managed their bottling operation. Did that for a little over a year. Got promoted and was in charge of all the dry goods, all the bottles, the boxes, the labels, everything coming in for the bottling operation. Then I also picked up another addition, promotion, and added all the wet goods. So basically, I was responsible for everything coming in from, you know, tank trucks out of Canadian Mist, you know, out of Collingwood, Canada, come down for bottled Canadian Mist, Pepe Lopez tequila coming up from Mexico, all the early times warehouse, which is right down the street from the main facility there in Louisville. But so I was with Brown-Forman for a total of 12 years, but 9 of those 12 years, after I got done downtown at the bottling operation, I got promoted out to the cooperage. And so I actually was managed the cooperage operations for a little over 9 years. And that was great. A lot of people thought, man, why do you want to go out to that hellhole? It's hot, it's nasty, it's smoky and dirty. And I said, you know, that's an element. I've learned how to make good whiskey. The barrel is so critical to the final product. You know, people don't realize 60 to 70% of the flavor in a finished bottle of whiskey comes from that charred white oak barrel. So it was another great training ground and gave me some exposure that I didn't have and experienced an area I didn't have. Most people don't. And that's an area now that I'm very proud of as a master distiller, that most master distillers never had that opportunity. So, and it means a lot to the finished product.
Yeah, that's crazy. It is kind of cool, especially, I mean, because Jack Daniel's has always been like a Goliath of the industry, but now like their single barrel products are taking off like a huge runway. You know, it's interesting to see them as a brand realize and start to market. Like Jack Daniel's single barrel proof is a big favorite of mine, and it's, you know, it's kind of cool to see that that's becoming a hallmark of their portfolio, besides, you know, number 7 too, which is, at least personally, is neat. So you were at Brown-Forman for 12 years. That's a pretty good tenure. And then did you move to Austin Nichols after that, or
yeah, I had an opportunity. You know, it's funny how corporate politics kind of get in the way of doing the right things. And so anyhow, it gave me an opportunity. Some things came up that some promises made that weren't kept. And so it caused me to start looking at other opportunities. And, you know, I had recruiters calling me every week, and I don't the thanks, but no thanks. And so finally I said, you know, yeah, sure, I'll listen. What you got? And this opportunity came up at the Wild Turkey facility with Austin Nichols. And so I said, yeah, we'll talk. And so I talked to a recruiter, and next thing you know, I got an interview and got the job. But I was basically the vice president of Austin Nichols and the managing director at the Wild Turkey Distillery. So, but I was there for when Pernod Ricard owned the facility. I was there a little over 10 years. So,
wow,
a great opportunity. You know, Jimmy Russell, Eddie Russell worked for me for that time period, and there's nobody better in this industry than Jimmy Russell. Jimmy's he's one of the one. He's probably the last of the true Mohicans when it comes to true master distillers that grew up with corn dust under their fingernails. So.
It's cool to hear that from someone, you know, that's as long-standing as you are in the industry, because like a lot of us feel that way. We're like, man, this Jimmy guy, like Jimmy just rocks. Like every time I talk to Jimmy, every time Jimmy's doing something, I'm like, man, you know, this guy's super cool. And you know, it's kind of cool to see that reflected, you know, from his peers as well, because it's not every day we get to talk to people who worked above Jimmy. You know, now it's owned by Campari, and like if you try and get anyone above Jimmy, you know, you just get some automated reply. It's very Campari-ish, but
yeah, you know, in those days, I mean, we had a lot of fun. I mean, not just Jimmy, but you know, Booker No and
oh man, yeah,
Elmer T. Lee and Parker Beam. I mean, you know, these are all good close friends. I mean, again, this industry, especially on the operations side, it's very close knit. You know, we look out for each other, and if you know, I tell people if we had a motor burn out and we didn't have a spare, I promise I could pick up the phone and I could call any one of the distilleries around us. And if they had that motor, they'd either throw it in the truck and bring it to us, or vice versa. We'd help them out. And we did that all the time. Now you get in the sales and marketing side, and it was a little more competitive. I mean, we're still competitors, but we helped each other out and we looked after each other. But, you know, like I said, Booker and Jimmy and Parker and Elmer and you know, there's many more, but those guys kind of, you know, laid the groundwork for what you're seeing today in this industry. Some great whiskey.
Oh man, that's cool. Yeah, and it's cool to hear too, because like we live in the age of like where you know every bottle has a story on the side, and you don't know how true it is, or you know everything's marketing fluff. So it's like it's super cool to realize that, you know, everyone was super close, tight knit back then, and it was, you know, not a big family, but everyone was buds and was into just making whiskey and stuff.
Yeah, it definitely was, for sure.
So tell us a little bit. So you hinted that you started the Russell's brand, and we'll get drinking some chicken cock whiskey here in a minute. But as I mean, like I think it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was like, hey, these Russell's barrels are kind of cool. Why don't I try like 50 of them? And me and like 5 people got like 50 of these barrels together and just tried a bunch of them and had a big party with it. And I was like, all right, you know, this Russell stuff's pretty cool. You know, we should pay attention to that going forward. So like, you know, so that was your brainchild, huh?
So yeah, so let me explain how that happened. Actually, when I started with Pernod Ricard in that role as managing director in the end of March 1998, I guess, and right away they said, you know, we need you to take a look at our inventory. We think we have too much whiskey. And I said, okay, well, I can do that, but I need to know what your sales forecast is, you know, extend it out. And so they said, well, we'll figure it 2% growth on every brand, on every item, every Wild Turkey item, out for 3 years. I said, well, that's fine, but I need to know out to 12 years, because you got some 12-year-old whiskey that you're selling on the international market, and And I need to know out 12 years what each brand, whether it's a 12-year, 8-year, the Rare Breed, the Kentucky Spirit, the 101, the 80 proof, whatever. I need to know each one. They said, well, just figure all 2% growth out for 12 years. So I built a pretty simple Excel spreadsheet. It's a liquidation distillation model, I call it. And so when I got done, I plugged in the numbers and took the inventory and showed them. I said, the fact is you don't have too much whiskey, but you got too much older whiskey. At that time, their finance department at the corporate office in New York City was the ones dictating which barrels they were going to pull to dump. And of course, Wild Turkey 101 was probably 75% or more of the volume that they bottled every year. And so at that time, it was 6.5-year-old whiskey. And what they would do is that if it was older, they would only use 6.5-year-old whiskey. Well, that's fine. 6.5, 7, 8 years ago, when you laid it down and barreled it, they were barreling more than what we were bottling at that time. And so they had an excess, and it kept getting older and older. Well, if it got another year older, they wouldn't, because it's, well, that's too expensive now. It's more evaporation and another years of ad valorem taxes. And so financially, focus strictly on the finances of it. So, well, we can't use that. That's too expensive. Well, you know what? I finally told them, I said, look, you got too much. So they said, well, what can we do? I said, well, first off, you got to bite the bullet. You have got to use some of that older whiskey.
Right.
And now you blend it with the 6.5-year-old, but not in such high percentages that you dramatically change the taste profile. And so everything, whether it was 80 proof, 101, we adjusted the formulations to use up some of the older whiskey. I said, the second option is you can try to sell mature whiskey. Now, at that time in the late 1990s, nobody was buying aged
That was
whiskey.
tough.
There was just no market, totally unlike it is today. So I said, the third option is we can come up and create a new brand. Well, okay, what should we do? I said, it's high time this company paid tribute to one of the greatest master distillers this world's ever seen, and that's Jimmy Russell. They said, yeah, that's kind of cool. I said, well, what do we call it? Well, for lack of a better term, how about if we call it Russell's Reserve? I said, that's kind of got a nice ring to it. And the marketing guys like this. Oh, yeah, that's great. The problem was we had some 10-year-old whiskey, and I'll get into that, but they came out and they wanted to hit a price niche between Rare Breed, which at the time was around $32, $34, and 101, which is around $19. And so they came out with a $24.99 bottle. It was a $40 bottle of whiskey at that time, back in the late 1990s, that they were selling for less than $25. So, but anyhow, Jimmy didn't know any of this. He was totally obliviated to what was going on. So one day I said, Jimmy, we got some great whiskey up there on the 4th floor of B Warehouse. I said, why don't you go up and pull a sample and let's check it out. We're thinking about maybe coming out with a new brand. And so I had a meeting with the union that day, and we were wrapping up and heard a knock on the door, and Jimmy comes in, and he's got a little, Glencairn, a little snifter glass like this. And he says, Greg, here's that bourbon you wanted to sample. So I said, well, yeah, let's just take a look at it. And I got it about a foot from my face. And man, the caramel and vanilla about knocked my head off. I said, whoa. And you have to know Jimmy. Jimmy wouldn't cuss if he had a mouthful, but he just give me that little grin and, yeah, that's pretty good stuff, And I stepped in and said, wow, this is fantastic. So, and again, he still didn't know, but later on when the brand rolled out and we kind of had a little celebration, promoting Russell's Reserve, and Jimmy shed a few tears over it, but it was great because he's a great guy. And at that time, it was in the old standard tall Wild Turkey 101 bottle, basically the standard whiskey bottle. Wild Turkey, it was 101 proof as well when we started out with it. Nowadays, the standard 10-year-old, I think, is 90 proof still. So, marketing a little bit. So,
it's really ironic. You guys keep talking about stuff that I have just within arm's reach, because that's what I was warming up with tonight. Yeah, 90 proof. Yeah. Man, that's neat. Russell's, to us is very much just like a daily phrase. Like I can't remember a day that's gone by that I haven't talked with someone about Russell's Reserve. So that's pretty fucking cool.
Well, hopefully here in a couple of years, Jay, we'll have some whiskey available that you can come down and do a pick as well with the chicken cock. So.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
our bourbon is, we've got, I think tomorrow is actually, if the math checks out, tomorrow we'll hit 145,000 participants. So it's a big family of people who like bourbon. So that'd be super cool. And that's a
geeks.
Perfect transition too. Yeah. For those of you that haven't seen Gregg's long profile or any of the tickers, he's here with Chicken Cock Whiskey, which we actually have a little bit to taste as well. So maybe we should chat about that a little bit.
Yeah, let's dig in.
We have the straight bourbon and the straight rye, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. So tell us a little bit about Chicken Cock Whiskey. I know.
Okay, so people always say, "Well, man, where'd you come up with that name?" So I didn't come up with that name. The brand originated in 1856 in Paris, Kentucky. So it's an old brand, old Kentucky brand. And people need to realize back in 1856, American culture, we were still using Old English. Okay, and in Old English, a male chicken was called a cock. So it was Chicken Cock Whiskey. James A. Miller, who started the distillery and started the brand, called it Chicken Cock Whiskey. The term rooster didn't really come around until the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it was actually driven by the Puritan sect that decided that the term cock was started taking on some sexual connotations, and so the Puritan sect decided, well, let's come up with a different term, and so that's when rooster actually became a term for a male chicken. So. But then it's an old brand and it has a lot of history, pre-prohibition. Come prohibition, like many distilleries, it had to shut down because they didn't have the funds to acquire a medicinal alcohol permit. And the brand sold to a company up in Montreal, Canada. And of course, they were making rye whiskey at that time. And so they made this rye whiskey, put it in the bottle under the Chicken Cock label. And they would put it in a tin can because that tin can protected it better when they would bootleg it across the border back into the U.S. And so, but actually, Chicken Cock, one of its probably its biggest claim to fame was it was the house whiskey at the Cotton Club, which is probably the most famous speakeasy during the Roaring '20s, during the Prohibition in Harlem, New York. And so there's a lot of history, a lot of literature, articles written and so forth, and Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Louis Armstrong, a lot of the old time musicians and entertainers spoke of it all the time. But before Prohibition ended, the brand was reacquired by a company that was a subsidiary of National Distillers. And they had a medicinal alcohol permit. So they started the distillery back up and actually started producing chicken cock as a medicinal alcohol. If you ever get to Kentucky, in Bardstown, Kentucky, there's a museum called the Oscar Getz Museum. They have the entire history of Kentucky whiskey, Kentucky bourbon. And there's a lot of those bottles, old bottles, and there's a lot of old chicken cock bottles of pre-Prohibition, during the Prohibition era, and they have some of the old medicinal alcohol. They have some prior to Prohibition, but they also have some of the bottles on display of the medicinal alcohol as well. So, Prohibition was repealed in 1933, and so the brand did well. It grew, and up until about, I think it was the 1950s, the distillery burnt down, and so at that time, the company decided not to rebuild it, and the brand just sat idle. It was a registered brand with the U.S. government, but the brand sat idle. And so around 2011, Marty Antle, the founder of Grain and Barrel Spirits, was reading up, doing a lot of research, and he found the brand and acquired the brand. And so, his vision was to eventually resurrect it back to Kentucky. And so in 2017, I decided to get out of the corporate rat race and ramp up my retirement plan, and that was not to retire, but start my own consulting company. And so when I started consulting, Marty was one of the first people I met, and I was helping him with the supply chain for another brand they have Dixie Vodka is another good brand of theirs. But eventually I helped him negotiate a contract with Bardstown Bourbon Company, and that's actually where we're making our whiskey today.
Okay.
You familiar with Bardstown Bourbon Company?
I am. Yeah, they have a couple cool releases, and we have a couple barrels that are sleeping there for a while.
Great company, great people. I've Steve Nally, who's one of the few people who've been in the industry longer than I have. He's been got a couple of years on me, but I've known Steve for a long, long time. Another great master distiller, and he helped that company get started. And so anyhow, I reached out to them, and it's great. They have a collaboration program where we use their facility, their employees. And basically, I gave them a mash bill. Our mash bill for our chicken cock is 70% corn, 21% rye, and 9% malted barley.
Okay.
And so likewise, I gave them all the work instructions as far as the time and the temperatures for cooking, the specifications for fermentation and distillation. And basically, I select the barrels as well. So then when they make our whiskey, I go down there and oversee the process and get them going with the first few batches to make sure they're on track with our specifications. So it's a great collaboration. They've got a great crew down there, and they're making some fantastic whiskey. So,
oh, that's cool. Yeah, we were okay. That answers the question. We were hypothesizing where you guys might be working out of, and Bardstown was not a guess. That's pretty cool. They're doing just about everything, including the kitchen sink there, between their own releases and contract releases and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's one of those places that, there's a number of distilleries doing contract distillation.
Yeah.
But it's different. This is collaborative distillation, okay? They actually let you, basically call the shots. Contract distillation, distilleries make whiskey and you can buy it. Okay?
Sure.
That's not the way this works. You actually have a say-so in every step of the process from start to finish. And again, like I said, they're great people to work with. They're doing a fantastic job, and I can't wait to see that whiskey become of age. We laid down the first 600 plus barrels in August of 2018. So it's a little over 2 years old. I just sampled it, and it's progressing very nicely. We've got another 600 that we laid down in February 2019. So it's 18 months old now. And then the last lay down we put down in March. So actually this week, it actually turned 6 months. So I'll be going down probably in the next week or two to sample it. I try to sample our whiskeys every 6 months of age. So, but this last one was unique. I was telling you about the cooperage experience that I had. Through my consulting services, one of my other clients is a company called West Virginia Great Barrel Company. New company, started making barrels. I helped them get their company started. But through that relationship, I went out there a year ago this past May, and I personally selected the logs that we use to cut the staves and heading. We air dried them for about a little over 10 months. And then I was out there to oversee the barrel process, making the barrels, the toasting, make sure they toasted them properly, charred them properly. And then, of course, we made the bourbon and filled those same barrels. So it's kind of neat, as we say, it was from bark to barrel to bourbon to bottle.
Yeah, seriously. So, that's about as hands-on as it gets.
Yeah, so it's kind of unique. I don't know of any other company, any other master distiller that has that experience of working in the cooperage as well. And so it'll be interesting to see, because every one of these logs was very, very tight grain.
Okay, I was going to ask, what were you looking for in the logs if you were going that deep?
Typical standard tight grain, Jay, is about 10 annual growth rings per inch.
Okay.
Well, West Virginia, that's all Appalachian. All that white oak's coming out of the Appalachian Mountains, okay? And that soil is rough and rocky. Now, the fact they're in some pretty tall, steep mountains, 50% of the trees are on a north-facing slope, so they don't get much sunlight to begin with. So they're gonna naturally grow slow just for that fact. But the soil in that area is just so rough and rocky that there's an extremely high percentage of very tight grain oak. So why is tight grain important? Well, most of those trees are averaging somewhere between 12 to 15 annual growth rings per inch. White oak, one of the reasons white oak is used, there's three primary components. There's cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. Cellulose is basically the cellular structure that makes the wood strong and holds it together. The hemicellulose is where the polysaccharides are, the wood sugars. So it's just like when you build that barrel and you toast it, just like holding sugar in a spoon and holding over a Bunsen burner. What's that sugar do? It starts melting and caramelizing on you. Okay. That's where that caramel flavors are coming from. in the whiskey. Likewise, the lignin, the third component, lignin. When you heat up that barrel, it converts that lignin into vanillin, which is where the vanilla flavors come from. And you remember earlier I said 60 to 70% of the flavor in a finished bottle of whiskey comes from that white oak barrel. Well, that's the primary components that are creating those great flavors. And so when you got tight grain, you got such a high concentration and high density of those components that are available in the wood to convert into all those great flavors. When you look at a standard 53-gallon barrel, and along the bilge, the belly of the barrel, you got 81 inches in circumference around that barrel, okay? 12 to 15 annual growth rates average. When you look at that, 81 inches, you're looking at anywhere from 970 to over 1,000 years of annual growth in one barrel.
Wow.
And that's I'm just trying to put it in perspective, the density and concentration of the flavors that are available. And so when you toast it properly and char it properly, man, I'm excited. I just can't wait. It's going to be at least 2024, unfortunately, until that whiskey becomes of age. But
right, yeah. So does that translate to a longer aging time with that more dense wood?
Actually, you should get more of that flavor earlier up front. Yeah. I still want to keep some longer because, to me, 6 to 12 years is kind of the sweet spot, depending on where it was aged in a warehouse. But we're going to bottle some at 4 years old because I think it's going to be comparable to many other older whiskeys at that point in time, just because we toasted it properly. When you toast it and you don't char it right away, you just toast it. So what you're doing is you're creating those flavors, like bacon brownies. You're creating those flavors and you're driving it deep into the wood so that when you do char it, you don't burn all those flavors away. We use a number 3 level char. We don't use, a lot of companies use a number 4, which is the heaviest char.
Yeah. Right.
But use a number 4, you create all those flavors and you burn them and you waste them. So you want to create it and then just want to char it just enough to kind of fracture the surface so that whiskey can actually penetrate through that char layer. And the char actually works like a charcoal filter. It's, a lot of people say, oh, that's where it gets its color and all the flavor. No, that creates like a charcoal filter. When you taste whiskey off the still, you can taste the corn and the rye and the malt. You can taste the grain. And that's what you want. You want that going into the barrel. But through the maturation, that whiskey drives into the wood and back out and into the wood and back out, that charcoal filtering strips that graininess out. And that's where it's picking up that caramel and vanilla and sweeter components inside the wood. So again, I don't mean to get on a entire seminar here.
No, man.
We go all night on something.
I want to go down that rabbit hole again, man. I
Yeah,
want to
that's
talk
super
about that
cool.
later.
No, it's funny because a lot of us just sit around and we all work from home now, obviously, so we all chat online and we're talking about weird wood and stuff. So it's super cool. Sometimes we wonder do companies even care that much? Maybe we're just reading too much into it. But
yeah, right. Does
honestly,
anybody
your
aside
passion
from
for
us
wood
talk
is
about this?
Yeah, that's awesome. That is.
I immediately started
cool.
thinking of stuff like the French oak finishes you see on some whiskeys and things like that because of that different type of grain and the different type of oak and the layers of flavor that you may or may not pull out of something just from just in a different region, let alone a whole different style of wood. So yeah, you could count me in as interested to see how that project goes.
Cool.
Yeah, I joined that TED Talk.
Yep.
Well, yeah, we're like I said, hopefully we'll have an opportunity here to do some barrel picks down the road as that starts to evolve and get some character closer to its full maturation. But in the meantime, part of my function is to go out and try to find good quality whiskey that we can put under the chicken cock label and bridge that gap until ours is a proper age. And so that's kind of what I've been doing here the last 3 years. And luckily we've been fairly successful. It's difficult. We were talking earlier in the late 1990s, you couldn't give aged whiskey away. There's just nobody was looking for it. But today, man, it's tough to find. And if you do find some good whiskey, there's whiskey out there, but not all of it's of the quality level that you may want to put under your label. And so to find a whiskey that's of that quality caliber is one thing, but then to be able to afford it and put it on a bottle and make a profit is another thing. So what we're tasting tonight is the Chicken Cock Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey is the first one. And unfortunately, I believe in being as transparent as I possibly can, but we had to sign a non-disclosure when we acquired this, and so I can't really share a whole heck of a lot of information. But you guys tell me. I mean, you've had an opportunity to nose it. What are you picking up?
Yeah, I mean, Jay and I both have actually talked about exactly where we thought it came from. We don't have to go down that road, obviously, but just on the nose, man, this brings a nice layer of vanilla to it. A little bit of like this. I even hate to say it now because Jay and I pull this note so frequently that we'll end up saying there's two things that come up so much, and one of them is praline, which I pick up on.
Oh
this.
yeah,
So we get like that, toasted nutty caramel, a little bit of background butteriness to it. And then another note, which I'm not really picking up here in a lot of products we get, is a bananas Foster. And I hate having to use either one because we say it so damn much. But, they're both things that incorporate all of those classic bourbon notes, whether it's caramel, vanilla, a little bit of nuttiness, some oak structure. Like we pull all those things together into, the way our minds shape it.
Yeah.
And that praline note sticks out to me here.
Yeah, I can tell you that this is actually a blend. I mean, it's some old whiskey, but then some really older whiskey that I blended with it. The primary batch that we were able to acquire, it was missing some of the characteristics that I really like, and luckily we had some pretty old stuff that we still had in inventory, and so I did some blending with it, and I really think it balanced it out nicely and gave us the profile we were looking for.
It comes through really nicely, like on the nose. I was like, oh, this is a little more youthful, but once it hits your palate, like I get like a Rice Krispie, like an apple crisp, and like there is some nice oak structure, even though it's it's not like 60% ABV where you get that big syrupy mouthfeel, but the oak is definitely there, and it's pulling its weight for sure.
Yeah, now this is 90 proof. I think we touched on that earlier before the podcast, but yeah, this is 90 proof. Both expressions, the rye as well, is 90 proof. So. And again, that's one of those things that I experimented with different proof levels. And, it's, you've got X amount of whiskey. You want to try to maximize your profitability, but by the same token, you want to put something in the bottle that's worthy of the price point that it's selling under, number one. And you want to, repeat sales. So
right. You don't want to buy one bottle and run it away.
You don't over dilute it. You want to knock it down to where that alcohol burn kind of subsides, and then the caramel, the vanilla, the phenolic compounds that are desirable kind of overtake the profile. Yeah,
this is nice.
I mean, it's still got that Kentucky hug, as I say. You can feel it, when you're drinking it neat. But
I think 45 does it well. The first thing I notice when places over dilute is that the mouthfeel just like completely vanishes.
It falls right away. And then it can't, then you don't coat the palate well enough. You lose everything on the backside there. You don't get any of the spice that comes through.
Yeah, this lands very nicely.
Yeah, I think this does a really good job at 90. It's a classic profile too. So it's not like it's coming out of left field to something a little bit crazy. This hits all of the right boxes.
Yeah, now we were kind of joking before we started the stream because both of our states don't carry this. So what's, just for the audience here, what's the MSRP on your bourbon and rye?
So the Kentucky bourbon suggested retail price on it's like $59.99, so $60 basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that not the same on the rye as well?
The rye is actually $69.90, $70.
Okay.
Retail. I've seen it less. I've seen it more. It just depends on the market. And you're right. Unfortunately, we're not into Wisconsin or Maine yet, but it's amazing. At the beginning of this year, I think we were selling in 12 states. And right now we're in, I think, 32, maybe 30, 32.
Wow.
Like that. So we've grown a lot this year. And
this is not an easy year for that either.
It is. Luckily, we don't do a lot of on-premise sales. The off-premise is booming right now. And as most companies are experiencing, it's a shame that the on-premise is not. And but hopefully we get through this pandemic, things will pick up and it'll catch up. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge jump already. I mean, and Wisconsin's pretty open. Like I expect, in a couple of years, and if not, we'll just trek on down to you.
I know we're in Indiana now, which was my home state, and we're in Illinois, so we're getting closer to Wisconsin.
Okay, I spent some time in Illinois,
and we are in New Hampshire as well. So we're creeping our way up there towards Maine.
Getting there.
All right, so
We'll
we have
push for
road
it,
trip
too.
availability.
There you go.
It's available on a road trip.
Within striking distance is usually good enough to get going. It's a good way to start.
Striking distance. Yeah, and the finish on this is pretty nice too. Like for 45%, like you said, it's got the Kentucky hug. Like there's a little
Yeah,
bit
it
of heat,
hangs
but
on.
it's not punishing.
Yep.
I think this would hold up well. I'm not a big cocktail guy, mostly because I'm lazy, but I think this would honestly work pretty well in an old fashioned if with the ABV being what it is and the oak being there. I think that this would probably hold up pretty well. Primarily neat.
Absolutely right, Jay. Same here. I like mine neater on the rocks, but I'm telling you what, I've had a couple old fashions with it, and it's fantastic.
That's awesome. I might have to give that a shot. Maybe this weekend. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I could see that with I pretty much say this every time though, so it's not even almost. It's almost just dumb to say, but I could see it with the black walnut bitters in there too for an old fashioned.
Oh yeah,
that would really.
You do like the black walnut?
I do. Super messed up that's all the. Every time I have something, I'm thinking of a cocktail. I'm like, man, this would go good to some black walnut bitters. Don't you think so?
I do picture you like at like lunch with like a glass of ice water and being like, black walnut bitters? Question mark.
It'd probably go really good in this, right?
Like, oh, which is disgusting.
Well, I am that.
Cool, yeah. So the bourbon,
I'm many things. Disgusting is just one of them, man.
It's okay.
I'm gonna get into this rye, I think.
Yeah, I just picked up the rye. I was going to say, holy cow, we'll catch on. I'm thinking of a note, John, and since you mentioned the telemetry, I'm curious to see if you'll pick up what I'm picking up. Not to like put you immediately on the spot, but we were talking about this. Maybe it was last week's stream, but it was pretty unique. But I think you'll get it.
So now I'm trying to think of what you're talking about instead of thinking about what it's like. I don't know. For me, this is going. Obviously, it's got a good chunk of rye to it, but it's more of a Kentucky style rye for me.
Sure.
It's got a little bit heavier layer of caramel than I would have thought it would for what's the mash on this, Greg? Is it 95.5?
I think it's 95.5.
Right? Yeah, it's I tell people for years I was not a big fan of rye. Okay, and when I was at Wild Turkey, Wild Turkey we made a rye. Didn't make a lot of it, but it was like 30 some odd % corn, and it had a harshness to us. It just didn't fit well with my palate. But some of these 95.5s that are out there now, when I started looking for rye that we could put under the chicken cock label, man, I have tasted some fabulous ryes. I couldn't believe it. And 95.5, I think, is a trick. And so this is actually, I can be transparent. This was actually, this rye came from Bardstown Bourbon Company. This is part of the collaboration.
No kidding.
Yeah. And when I first nosed it, and again, I try to block out age statements. Okay. I'm looking, when I go out and I'm trying to source whiskey, I'm looking for something that really, has the right nose, has the right taste, and that is of the quality level that we want under the chicken cock label. And so when I sampled rye, this one just, I thought it was fantastic. I think the nose is full of spice, and you got some peppery notes in there that fantastic. I've done so many different podcasts over the last few months. Some people pick up dill.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit, but and that's what I tell people. There is no right or wrong answer when you're doing a tasting.
Sure.
Everybody's nose, everybody's palate is different. So, what you pick up is maybe something totally different than what I pick up. But at the end of the day, if you like it, drink it. I just, but
sure.
I like to grill out. I've got a big green egg, and I do a lot of smoking on it. And so one of the dry rubs I use, it's got paprika, it's got some cumin in it. And I pick those notes up in this rye. I get some paprika, I get some of the cumin notes and some of the spiciness of it. So,
yeah,
it's interesting you mentioned that, because I was going to say peach rings, smoked paprika, and then like a heavy molasses clove. But I think it was Woodford wheat last week.
Oh man, you love those peach rings.
And I was like, man, this smells like peach rings. And John was like, motherfucker, what? I was like, peach rings. Like, come on, like.
Man, this has got like a big hit of like a wildflower honey too. I really dig that. That hits me just right. Yeah, I really like that.
You're right, though. I get that as well. I get a little bit of that wildflower honey.
Yeah, man.
It's funny you mentioned the age statements too. Because like when we do selections, like I tell people like you can be involved. I'm just never going to tell you what it is, and people always pick the youngest. Like we had 4, 5, and 6-year-old smooth ambler, and the 2 picks that won were on the younger side. And every time, once you blind out the age statements, people think they like older, but once they let their palate guide, it's rarely the oldest in the bunch, if ever, like by an overwhelming margin. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah,
this is nice.
Yeah, there's some nice white fruit in there. It's almost like a white grape.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
I'm gonna clean my peach rings, but this is
yeah. You take your peach rings. That's fine.
Hey, Jay, you mentioned earlier old fashioned, and I'm telling you what, making old fashioned with this rye, oh my God, it is out of this world. Again, I'm not a big cocktail guy either. But occasionally I like a Manhattan or an old fashioned, but this rye makes a fabulous old fashioned.
I'll take your advice. I got some of the sample left. I'll whip one up. I'm starting to pack for a move, and so like most of my whiskey's in storage anyway. So I've been like getting creative with what hasn't been packed yet, like this random Russells I pulled out.
Yep, perfect.
This would be good. This like has enough bite too to like, you know, the sweetness of the old fashioned, also the bitters. Like I feel like it could stand up very well to both of those components. Which sometimes like the first thing to get lost is the whiskey, which I don't think would be the case at all.
No, this is a really good rye structure, man. Ooh. I like how it's got that much richer profile. Like a lot of times with the 95.5s, like if you look at things like the Bullet stuff, it's very, very classic and very good, but it's also in that same way kind of like two-dimensional. There's not like a real deep layer of flavor to it. It checks off all the boxes, but it doesn't really go much further. But I like this, just goes one layer deeper on that rich note, and I do like that quite a bit. That fruit, honey, spice all kind of works together just right. You know, I wouldn't black walnut this one. I think I'd put orange bitters in it.
Well, hell is frozen over. We found something.
Tell me about it.
Black walnut. It's nice though. It's on the fruitier side, which is rare for rye that I enjoy. But this is
especially at that 95.
I do.
If this was like a Kentucky, like a, like wild turkey rye at that 52%. There's tons of citrus in there and stuff like rare breed rye. It, for me, was like Fruit Loops and white pepper and black pepper all rolled up into one. But this is fruity and sweet in all the right ways, man. That's good.
Yeah.
Now, can you say, are these filtered, unfiltered, somewhere in between?
These are filtered, but they're not chill filtered. Okay. We're not doing any chill filtration whatsoever. And then, again, 90 proof. It's especially if it's going up to Maine or Wisconsin, it has
going to be cold.
the potential for hitting some cold climates, and people don't realize what chill filtration does. When chill filter, a lot of whiskeys nowadays, if it's less than 100 proof, what happens is it sits in the barrel, and there's fatty acids that are in that wood and get into the whiskey. And so if you don't chill filter it and you just filter it and bottle it, and say it goes up through cold climate in the wintertime, that cold temperature, those fatty acids coagulate and they get create flocculation. So it's flocking inside the whiskey. So you'll see a bottle of whiskey and you'll see this stuff just floating around in it. You shake it up, it'll dissipate, but it'll flock right back. And that's those fatty acids that have coagulated because of the cold temperatures. By chill filtering, what you do is you take the whiskey before you bottle it and you get it below freezing temperature, and then you filter it. You coagulate all those fatty acids and you filter them out. And unfortunately, what that does, it strips a lot of the color and a lot of the flavor out.
Right.
And so if you can, afford to sell it unchill filtered, man, you're going to get a lot more flavor and so forth. So all of our products are unchill filtered right now.
Okay, that's great. I was noticing, I was like, wow, this actually has pretty good mouthfeel for not being, some gonzo ABV. And that's what's like,
a little buttery
unfiltered.
It's got some good weight to it. Yeah, I noticed it more on the rye, the butteriness, but it is there for sure.
Yeah, certainly. Man, that's nice stuff.
Absolutely.
And especially out of Bardstown Bourbon Company. Admittedly, I've had a bunch of their rye, but not, like I haven't had tons and tons and tons of it. So this was going under my radar for being Bardstown. But
well, believe it or not, and people, it says it on the label, the back label. This was a little bit less than 2.5 years old when it was done.
Wow. Okay.
No kidding. Wow.
And that's why I said when I go looking at stuff, I don't look at the age per se. I'm just focusing on the aromas and the flavors and that. And when people taste that, and then I tell them later on, because if it's less than 4 years old, you got to put the age on the but on the back label. If you look right by the UPC on the back label, it says aged 2 years or something along those lines, 24 months or whatever. But it's amazing for being in a barrel that short period of time. It's picked up some fabulous flavors, and again, that's a tribute to the guys at Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Yeah, really they must be putting something really good in those barrels to start out with, man, because that came out nice.
Yeah, especially at 2 years. It's funny because a couple of my friends got laid off last week, so I had a bunch of these little minis of Sazerac rye. So I was just handing them out like, hey, you take one, you take one, and then I popped one. I was like, yeah, everyone gets rye in it. Thinking about this reminds me of that Sazerac rye profile, but that's 6 years. So this is getting close at a third of that age is actually kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, a few more proof points doesn't hurt it either.
No, not at all. That's nice stuff. Is there plans to let this continue to age a bunch more? You're gonna keep doing on the younger side for a while, or are you going for like an 8-year?
Right now, I'm still sourcing. We're probably going to be shooting around the same time frame. I mean, it's got such a great profile that I think we're going to continue with it. We're actually laying down some rye this coming year. We're actually doubling. We've been laying down 600 barrels every year. This year we're going to do 1,200. Probably 200 of it's going to be rye, and the other 1,000 is going to be bourbon. So there's big things planned ahead. I think what we're doing with the barrels. I'm going back out. I was out there in May and June of this year, selecting logs again for what we're going to produce here in January, February, March, in that time frame, in the first quarter of 2021. For the barrels that's going to be aged in. So again, it's an ongoing process. It's something unique that people aren't doing, and I'm excited as heck to see the results, because I said everywhere I've worked, and it was kind of there was a purpose in my career to get me to where I am today, and provide the opportunity to do something unique. And I think something that the whiskey industry and the whiskey world, the whiskey lovers, are going to truly enjoy.
Man, that's cool. Yeah, 12. I mean, that's even a big jump. I was surprised you guys were doing 600 the last couple of years, but doubling up to 1,200.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You got a lot of whiskey coming online.
Yeah, and that's it's people got to understand. You're going to get in the whiskey business. You better be patient. You better have lots of money. So
I know, right?
Yeah, really.
People often ask me too, because and they'll be like, "Hey, I'm interested." I'm interested. Like, I want to open a distillery, and I'm like, the best way. I was like, do you want to have a small fortune? They're like, of course I do. And I'm like, all right, well then you're going to need a big fortune, and then you can open your distillery, and then you're going to have a small fortune afterwards.
That's a good way to look at it.
Like, it can't be that expensive. And I'm like, oh, it's expensive.
Yeah,
you want to make something buy.
Has some very loyal, very dedicated investors, and they believe in the brands, and they're invested in it. So that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Man,
yeah, going back, the bourbon's nice, but I'm leaning for that rye, which is atypical for me. I typically go for bourbon over rye, but it's a really nice rye.
Yeah, good. I'm chasing that rye, man. I'm going to be after Maine to start looking into this.
Well, you can spend some time in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
that's cool. So you were talking about the bottle too. I know we were talking about this in the green room, but I figured I'd give you a chance to show it off before we pack up for the night.
Yeah. So this bottle, this is the bottle that that's the bourbon, and then the green label.
Okay, rye for green. Yep,
is the rye. Both these bottles, and then we have another bottle. It's called a Starburst bottle that we do our limited offerings in. All these bottles are actually replicas of the pre-prohibition era of chicken cock bottles. Chicken cock bottles. This was, they weren't the 750 size back then. They were pint bottles actually, but we were able to build the 750 and milliliter replica. The Starburst bottle. I don't know if you've seen it or not. Some of our limited offerings. We did a 8-year-old single barrel.
Okay.
In 2016, it was actually the 160th anniversary of Chicken Cock whiskey, and so we came out with 8-year single barrel, and that was before I started working with the company. When I started working, I asked the founder, "Let me have the last 12 barrels of this this whiskey, and it was getting close to being 10 years old. So I did a chicken cock 10-year-old double barrel batch. It was actually 2 barrels per batch. I like single barrel. My only rub with single barrels, they can be so inconsistent, barrel to barrel to barrel. And so I wanted to do something special, do something that was more consistent, but also maximize the amount of flavor that was available in that whiskey. And so the first thing I did, that they range from 108 to 115 proof in the 12 barrels. And so I started knocking it down a proof point at a time till I hit that proof level where, like I said, I didn't over dilute it. I got that alcohol burn down to where the caramel and vanilla kind of overtook the profile. But that product actually for that whiskey was 104 proof, and it was smoother than most 90s. There's the other bottle. I'm glad you brought it up. That's
I finally dug it up. I had to put it over everybody's face, but there it is.
No.
You see, it's got the cap. It's actually got a cork finish on it, like the other. But that's a little jigger cap. Back in the old days,
cool.
that was a kind of a shot glass that you could screw on the bottle, and then they call it a jigger cap.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So the Righteous Blonde that you just showed the picture of, that was our latest limited offering. We did a collaboration with Goodwood Brewing Company in Louisville, Kentucky, and our first batch of the Kentucky Straight Bourbon, I gave them 6 barrels empty after you dumped the bourbon out, and sent them the barrels, and they aged their blonde ale in it, and they got some fabulous beer, by the way, but they aged their blonde ale in it for about 8 weeks. When they dumped the beer out, I got the barrels back and I put rye whiskey back into it, and I would check it, sample it about every couple of weeks just to see how it was progressing. But it was a little over 5 months, and I felt it had saturated all the flavor, and it was going to get out of it, and it's really unique. I mean, that's with these finished, barrel finish, beer barrel finish products, and this was our second collaboration we did with Goodwood. They're very unique. What you get a lot of that malted barley flavor, right up front and in the nose and that. But the rye, the complexity of the rye, really, it was just, I don't know, just the flavor of it was spectacular. For me, I just like putting it in a Glencairn for an after dinner drink. You get the sweetness, you get the malted barley, you get the rye flavors, all the spiciness of the rye, and it's a nice complexity of all those flavors. But yeah, it was kind of a play on words. The Righteous, if you notice, Righteous was spelled RYE.
Yeah.
OUS. It was kind of to get around a few of the governmental laws that you couldn't call it rye whiskey. You could call it rye whiskey finished in a beer barrel, but you couldn't call it rye whiskey. So we call it Righteous Blonde, since it had blonde ale in the barrel previously. So we're looking at doing some more limited time offerings. We actually have one coming up. We're going to bottle here the 15th of October. We're actually going to bottle it, and it's going to be available in Kentucky only, but also online. If you live in a state, you guys, I don't know, can you buy online up in Maine or in Wisconsin?
We can at Wisconsin.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
Jake can proxy for me.
buy this online. We've got actually. I tell people when I go out looking for high quality whiskey to source that we can put under the chicken cock label, it's a treasure hunt. And sometimes you find some nice gold coins and some things that are worthy of putting under the label. But I'm so thrilled. We found a gem. I mean, this stuff is fantastic. And so 15th of October, we're going to bottle it, but it's going to be the chicken cock 15-year-old barrel proof. It's going to be about 114 proof, and the flavors are just out of this world. I mean, it's one of those things when you guys have tasted, I'm sure, as much bourbon as I have, and they're nice, and you can be polite or not be polite, it doesn't matter. But this one, wow, it has that wow factor. It is so good, good.
Giddy
Color
up.
me interested.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out.
Aaron up on that one, okay?
I'll keep an eye out for that. It's funny, like we talk about this off and on, but like I've been holding off on large bourbon purchases because I close on a house in October, but I close on the 15th. So if you put it any day after that, like, and you see like a suspiciously large purchase from Wisconsin, know that it's in Wisconsin.
Earlier, it's finding those rare gems is one thing. When you find them, to be able to afford them is another thing. So
no kidding.
Going to be pretty high on this one. So, but
I believe it.
Anyhow, it's fantastic. I've been blessed in my lifetime to taste some fabulous whiskeys throughout the world, but now I'm a bourbon lover, and if I get a chance to taste a great bourbon, you know, it makes my day and my year. And this one is absolutely fabulous. I'm so proud that we're able to put it under the Chicken Cock label. So,
Well, that's cool, man.
Excellent.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, we're coming up about the hour mark here. I know, we can start to wrap it up, but is there anything you'd like to share with the audience before we get our last sips in and we kind of pack it up for the night?
No, not necessarily. I think we covered so much already.
Hell yeah, we did.
Again, I don't know if anybody had any questions or if you're getting anything feed through, but it's one of those things that again, I've been very blessed in my lifetime to have an opportunity to work in this industry and been exposed to a lot and worked for a lot of great companies and worked with a lot of great people. And at the end of the day, if you can take what you learn and take those experiences and be able to apply them to, a product that you can kind of call your own, not necessarily your own, but, part of a team effort to make this chicken cock become resurrected and alive and strong and growing again. So that's kind of what we're doing. And I think we made some pretty good progress.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, I really enjoyed trying both of these, and it was, especially it's great to try stuff that I can't just go down to the store and buy. Like, it's always nice to get stuff in the mail and check it out, but it's super cool to see, we get a ton of booze here in the States, but we don't get all the booze. And it's kind of cool to just see what's going on in other parts of the country. And, and now we know to keep an eye out for it, especially that 15-year stuff. So that's
Definitely.
awesome.
And, I'm a sucker too for any of the old brands that get resurrected. Like, even if the story were garbage, if it's like a resurrected brand and it's coming back pre-prohibition to these days, it just it excites me a little bit in a nerdy way. And I'm always going to kind of even if I go into it thinking okay, this might be a little bit of a dodgy product, but it's got a kind of a cool story and it's old, historic. I'm going to want to try it. And I like that what came out of the bottle is good because, the old timiness to it is fun, but matching it up with some good whiskey also helps.
And some black walnut bitters.
Well, yeah, I mean, naturally. If you're going to take the time to make a cocktail, you may as well put something good in it.
You got to go for it. Well, Gregg, man, it was so awesome to have you. Thank you so much for dropping by, guys. If you're interested in chicken cock whiskey, give it a Google, or you can visit the link that John just popped up because that's super handy. Like you said, they're doing tons of cool stuff. They have all sorts of stuff coming out, so definitely give them a look. And yeah, I'll pack it up here and then I'll let John take us home. But I'm Jay from Take That Review. Next week we'll have some Our Bourbon news for new barrels coming out. But you know where to find me. And I think that's it. Hopefully everyone's staying healthy and staying entertained. But yeah, why don't you take us home, John?
Very good. Gregg, thanks again for coming on, man. This is great. Really, really honored to have you come in here and just give us all of this great history, man. Your story is it's something to behold, and it's really cool to share this whiskey with you.
My pleasure, guys. I really enjoyed it.
Alrighty, so I'm just going to wrap it up here. John, you can find me at TheBourbonFinder.com, Instagram at TheBourbonFinder. And thanks for tuning in for Weekly Whiskey with John and Jay. Hopefully you guys stick around, subscribe, and next week we'll be here live again on Tuesday doing this again and having a little bit more fun, having some more whiskey.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, with that, guys, cheers. Have a good night.